Fain here from Asset Planning Corporation, reporting to you with in the field reporting from Petey the Wonder Dog. I'm coming to you today wearing rose-colored glasses because we're going to talk about economics. That's right, the dismal science. Specifically, we've had a few questions about the election, this 2020 election, and the impact on the federal debt, which at the beginning of the year was around $20 trillion. And with the passing of emergency stimulus packages, it's probably going to wind up pushing $24–25 trillion. So I want to talk a little bit about that. It's definitely a political issue and causes a lot of arguments at the dinner table in America. Let me get to a screen share with you, and I'll share a few slides. Bear with me a second. There we go. So the question I think on a lot of people's mind is, how will fiscal and monetary policy affect my financial plan? Should we be worried about our national debt? Well, we have to acknowledge the political side of the question. We have to acknowledge the concern that it creates for our personal economics. Most economists are in general agreement that today's actions are necessary to avoid a larger slump. The alternative now, as it was in 2008, during what we now call the Great Recession, the concern is that things would be even worse if we didn't have some emergency spending, what we are calling stimulus packages. So Fed action today is a counterweight to the economy just grinding to a halt. The actions in and of themselves are theoretically good or bad. It's just a matter of striking a balance between the deflationary effects and liquidity needs that stimulate the economy with the handling of this massive debt in the future. There's obviously generational concerns that come up in the debate. So if we have too little stimulus and debt, the economy falters. Too much, we get inflation. So it's a tough situation. Now we have some historical precedent. If we go back to the 1940s, the U.S. debt was 120% of our gross domestic product, GDP, which is the total value of the goods and services produced in a year in our economy. But as your parents or grandparents will recall, we needed that debt to win World War II and to generate economic activity in a very uncertain time. This helped investment in infrastructure and technology that would later translate into the private sector after the war. So debt can be tackled through GDP growth over time, expanding jobs, expanding wages, expanding consumer spending. It can be addressed through changes in taxes or spending, or all the above. Now, I've already triggered half the people on this webinar because there's very heated debates about spending and taxes and GDP assumptions in the future, and I get that. So these are tough decisions, and as financial planners that work with individuals about their personal financial plans, it begs bigger questions. What are the things that matter to you and your family? And what are the things that you can control? Because those things that are in the overlap of those two questions are where we should have our focus. And that's your personal financial plan and your personal financial goals and how we can influence those. We'll have a few ideas when we wrap up this webinar in just a moment. So if we look at debt as a percentage of GDP around the world, you can see that some of the most indebted nations are places like Japan and Venezuela that owe a lot more than the gross output of their economies. You can see some low debt to GDP countries like Luxembourg, Russia, and Afghanistan. And then the US and France and Canada and Singapore are kind of in the middle. Not all debt is the same. I mean, Japan is considered a stable economy. I believe that their national debt is still has an A rating. Venezuela is in shambles. There's no stability in that economy and hyperinflation. Russia has low debt to GDP, but you know, their bonds are considered junk bonds. There's concern about their ability to pay them back. So it all has relevance. I guess to bring the USA into an example, in 2009, the US had to pay, or was paying, about 3.5% on a 10-year treasury bond. Our friends in Greece had a 4.5% yield on a treasury bond. 3 years later, in 2012, the US had a 2% yield on 10-year bonds, and Greece had a 30% interest rate they were paying on their national bonds, their federal bonds, or their equivalent of a treasury bond. Then you might say, well, heck, I'll take the 30% rate. Well, you didn't. No one wanted Greek bonds in 2012. The Greek economy was on the verge of failure. People couldn't get their money out of the banks. It was a crisis. Petey the Wonder Dog's in the background. He's agreeing with me very vocally about the problems of the Greek people. So we have to watch what people what economies can pay back their debt, and what are they having to pay to try to incent investors to come to their economy. So, you know, it's important. It's a national discussion, and we've got to be prepared to adapt to the data and hold our government accountable. It's an agreement. We're going to go forward to finding solutions. And there is, you know, the debate will rage on about how to do it. The country is pretty evenly divided, 50-50 politically, in terms of parties and policies. So we've got a lot of work to do. What can we do? What can we control? What can we work on now? Well, I would say that what we should be focused on is our household debt, whether it's mortgages and cars and student loans and credit card debt. We certainly can focus on our personal spending. During times of uncertainty, volatility, crisis, it's time to put the pencil to the paper, as Fain used to say, and work on our budgeting. You know, we can use the tools and tactics of tax planning within the legal framework of the IRS. We can impact our investment strategy, our risk, our investments in bonds versus stocks and diversification. We can look at estate tax planning, gifting, charitable giving, family gifting, exemptions, beneficiary designations, trusts, etc., to optimize our personal financial planning goals. So again, we don't know what the future holds, but we can, you know, always be in the process of assessing the options as they unfold. So, you know, in conclusion, does the national debt matter? Sure it does. How we tackle it remains a big question. And, you know, we should commit to being a part of the conversation and be knowledgeable about the tactics to address it in the future for our children and grandchildren's sake. So I hope that sheds a little information on your thought process. Certainly love to hear from you if you have thoughts, comments, or questions. And thank you for your time and attention. We'll talk to you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.